Barry, thank you so much for taking out the time for watching a movie. So,
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. That was awesome, man. Whatever. I love it. I mean, it's not very often. I mean, it's been a decade now almost.
Barry will tell the story, but Barry had called me. Was it in June, Barry, 2010?
Yeah, that was the first call. It was around that time in 2010. And it said it in that piece, but I worked at National Geographic. I had moved to Italy with my wife. I was kind of between, my career was kind of not a lot was going on because of the move. A friend of mine who I'd worked with at Nat Geo, Dan, who's in that piece for a second, he just saw your post, and he knew that I did a previous ultra running thing. And I reached out to you, and the great thing about you, Rajat, when I called you the first time, I don't remember if you completely remember this, but when I called you the first time, you literally were like, yeah, well, listen, we really need you. This is going to be an amazing. You're not going to miss this. You better get over here. You got about 1 month to get on the plane. Like, you literally, like, there was I was like, the race was 4 weeks away, and you literally was like, listen, you need to get here. If you're going to do this, this is going to be the best event of your life. You're not going to miss this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get over there. You got me so excited. But then after the first call, and I probably still have it. I probably still have the recording saved somewhere because I saved all of our calls. But after the first call, I was like, oh, I don't even know how. This is such a short timeline. I need to get cameras over there. I need to get a crew over there. Had I known that 2010 was going to be what it was, and the thrilling kind of highs and lows that it really became, but the excitement of that window of time and all that happened and all the drama, I still sometimes think I didn't completely capture the full extent of how dramatic that first race was, but we did our best.
And how was it for you with the altitude? Like we talk about the runners, but you as a person who was doing the whole recording, and putting the whole show together, how was it? How tough was it for you? The whole altitude and air and stuff, temperatures.
I would have to say it was easily one of the most challenging experiences of my life. And I had done a lot of mountaineering before this, but I think we lost one of our film. Do you remember who we lost? One of the guys that came to film with us. We had to fly him back out early because he had altitude sickness and was in bed for 3 days, never got out of bed. And we finally just said, listen, you need to go home after like day 2 and staying up all night vomiting. It was just like insane. I myself was having nightmares at night. I couldn't sleep. I would wake up feeling like I was suffocating. I mean, I don't want to scare people away, but it was the acclimatization process. Now, once I was acclimatized, that was a different experience, but it's the whole flying from virtually sea level to 10,000 feet, that whole thing, if you were to drive it or hike it or do any other form of normal climatization, but that whole thing was a hard experience, and then what did we do? We went up to, at that time you were going to that other base camp. Your original base camp was at like 12 or 13,000 feet. So, and then that was the night before you stayed there, and you slept on.
That was Cardon Village.
Yeah, and the windstorms came, and one of the tents got blown down in the middle of the night, and there was chaos and melee, and but in all that, for me, that's where it got exciting. So some people might look at that and go, no, I don't want to be part of that. But for me, that's where the adventure began. That's where it started, and I feel like that's what this is. It is like the ultimate adventure. Like chaos is part of the experience, right? Chaos is the experience. And so for me, that was just like, I look back on that fondly because I'm like, I remember it acutely. You know what I mean? When you have that level of suffering and challenge, I remember it acutely, and I'm just like, what an amazing time. It's just like so crazy. And then you'd have the moments in the tents where you'd eat the food. Remember, they'd cater in those big tents, they'd bring in that amazing Indian food, and we'd all sit around and eat at the tables and talk, and people would connect, and it was just such an amazing experience. But yeah, the altitude, but then it was tough, but the views, where else on the planet could you have, like, I never remember air so clear in my life. I'd look into those mountains, and I felt like I was looking, I don't know, it's nothing I've been able to, I can't explain it,
Yeah. Barry, so, when we spoke first, what did you think? I mean, did you think we'll be able to do it? How big did you think it would be? Uh, so I'm talking about 2010, say maybe June, right?
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts back then?
I thought you were crazy. And I think you knew that because for an Indian to be making this leap into kind of make this experience happen there was so much more between you and that experience. In America they've been kind of making ultra races, and in other parts of the world they've been doing ultra races, but ultra running had not come at this level in India. So you were kind of a pioneer of ultra running in India at this time. So that's the first thing that I captured from this experience, because I was like, when I looked into this, I was other people were like, well, there's ultra runs here and here and here. In America, it kind of boomed into more of a sport, and in other parts of the world, it boomed into kind of it still had a kind of cult nature to it. Like there weren't a lot of ultra runners, but ultra runners had been more established in other countries. So in other countries, they might be like, oh, it's another race. There's already 20. So now there's 21. But in India, it was like unheard of. So for me, the first thing that I took from this was I just felt this sense of pioneering. And what I loved about you was this willingness. I mean, the fortitude that it took for you. I'm sure your family thought you were crazy. I know you had mentioned at different times some of those experiences where they were like, and we kind of did that one piece on you where we talked a little about your history and where you'd kind of grown up and how life was. And for you, it was like, and I don't think people fully can appreciate that unless they've lived it. But if you have the support system that says, oh, sure, we've already done this, keep going, it's a lot easier than when you have everyone looking at you going, your father and probably parents were kind of like, what? You're going to do what? You're going to go run? So that for me was another intriguing part of this. But then you went up, and then I knew the story of you running yourself, where you and your friend kind of went up there and kind of were like, it just kept going up and up and up and up, and you guys kind of failed in your first attempt at it, and then you're like, well, isn't that the lesson, Rajat? Shouldn't you quit? And you're like, no, that's the perfect example of why we should do it. I can't make it, so let's make other people do it, So it was, for me, the whole thing, when I met you and saw you, I was like, I felt like I kind of saw into the whole picture of what it was for you, the challenge of pioneering it in the country, the fact that no one else was doing it, you didn't have a support system, the military who was like, what? Who is this guy? What are you doing coming up here? We're fighting, coming up here and wanting to make a race. You attempting it yourself and failing at it, and then you kind of go forward with it at any, I don't think, because society has come so far with so much technology and whatnot, I don't think we fully understand what it is to be a pioneer, right? Because to pioneer something means to go into space, the unknown, and go into spaces that people haven't gone before, and go against the trends, and go where you have self-doubt and you're like, maybe I am crazy, and still keep going until you achieve it, until you achieve that experience. And for me, I was just like, this is pioneering. Everyone thinks I'm a pioneer because I biked across a country that's been established, and they have 100 races every year or whatever. I swam this that's been done 10 times, 20 times, 100 times. But pioneering is really when you're going into the forest and no one's chopped a trail, and you're like, I don't even know where I'm going. We just ran into a cliff. Now I got to figure out how to get around that cliff. And everyone's like, you're crazy. Go home. And I was like, this guy's a pioneer. How can I tell this story? For me, that came more, and I uncovered the story. So for me, 2010 came and went so quickly. Then I went over there, and I went over there with the intent of covering 2012. And I sat down with you, and I'll never forget. And I sat down with Molly. Molly started crying. Weeping about in 2011. Molly started weeping about the experience of how emotional it was and how attached she had instantly become to you and to the whole race. And you were telling me about this experience, and I was just like, holy cow, if I can just tell this story. And, but for me, I was just like, this is insane. This is so incredible. And but did I think, I didn't know, for me, it was less about, well, will he make it? Won't he make it? For me, I was just engrossed by by who you were as an individual, because I connected to it. I connected to you as an individual because you're not a mainstream pop culture guy. You're a pioneer, and usually pioneers don't get rewarded until they die. So just FYI, they'll build a statue of you when it's all over. But unfortunately, you'll never enjoy it while you're alive.
Fair enough, Barry. Barry, what I'll do is I'll open for questions. So there are quite a few people right now. There are 16 other people than us, besides us. So if they have folks, so whoever has any questions, so if you just jump in and just ask, or maybe raise your hands, whichever way.
Barry, thanks a lot for all that. You don't know me, but I know you very well because I've been following your documentary and, how you made of the making of the high, all of that. So thanks a lot for it. I just wanted to ask you, you wanted to catch the first edition and then you actually made the first edition in the second edition. Have you thought about coming back and doing another series, a documentary on how it's evolved from then to now?
That was the hardest filming I have ever done in my life. I mean, you can't just go over there and casually film. Like, you have to physically be prepared for it. That's the only challenge. So if I came back over, I would need some youngsters to kind of carry the load. I did it a decade ago, and I was in pretty good shape, but even at that time, it was tough. And that's the only challenge with this is, so yes, the answer is yes. How that happens, that's in the space of unknown.
Thanks, Barry. We'll definitely look forward to that, and I hope it's as soon as next year.
I hope.
And I volunteer to carry the load for you.
All right, good. I got one crew. That's awesome.
Hi, Barry. How are you? Good morning.
Morning.
So, Barry, I have 3 questions for you based on whatever I saw. So, my first question is on your storyboard. So, how much of your storyboard could you reproduce? How much of it had to be scrapped? And how much of it was random?
Well, by that time, that was like the second visit, and it had been the 3rd year. So 2010, I connected with Rajat. 2011, I went over and did the first filming and captured the run with Sharon Gaynor. In 2012, I went back with James. And so by this time, I had a really clear idea of what had happened in 2010. And so the storyboard, actually, we executed it pretty much to key. It was amazing that we did, and it required some very tense moments. I remember Rajat and I kind of having some very, I wouldn't say heated is the right word, but you get exhausted. And he's managing the race, and he's managing the runners who have got to go through acclimatization. And then he's coming and he's doing meetings with them in the evenings and in the morning. And then he's coming to meet me, and I'm saying, Rajat, I need you to come up here. We've got to shoot this scene here. And he's like, oh my God, I can't, Barry, I can't, I'll do it tomorrow. I'm like, tomorrow isn't going to work. We have to do it today. And so it required, and the same Molly and Bill happened. That was the serendipitous part of this whole thing was, I don't know how, I don't know. Everyone has different belief systems. Everyone has different opinions on how life works. But all I know is I took on all this risk. I got people to raise money, and it said in that piece, somehow it worked out for me to travel over there, and also it worked out that Bill and Molly were there as well. That was amazing. So then I just had to pretend I was Mark, which I was not Mark, but I got Mark to give me his clothes, and I mimicked him. But yeah, I mean, so the shots pretty much follow in line. It took a lot of pushing and nudging. And the year before, in 2011, I had a very stressful moment with my crew. And because of the altitude and the stress and the lack of sleep, I don't think I handled it well. So I learned my lesson on that year about the stress that can come at high altitude, because you can't you can't always think straight up there, and you get so exhausted, and you get and you don't always make your brain can't always function well. So you got to slow yourself down and not allow yourself to get into that red area. But we kept pushing it, and then the hardest night. But by this point, everyone was on board. Was when we went with VJ and Rajat and everyone, and we went to where did we go, Rajat? What's the Maury Plains? And we stayed up all night, and that was the second and last part of the shoot where we captured that side of the storyboard. I still have all those storyboards, but what was the important thing that I would add to that was I had captured the whole story, and VJ wanted to go to this cool watering hole, and I just regretted that. No, I shouldn't say regret's not the right word, but I wanted to push on and get these last shots that I never ended up using. And, you know, sometimes in life, you know, so much of the energy had kind of worked, you know, people had showed up and I got my job off. And there's that one moment with VJ where it felt like everyone wanted to go to this watering hole. We had wrapped and we'd had this experience and been up all night. And I kind of pushed against it. And we ended up doing a shot that I never used. And that was the only thing where I stuck so closely to the storyboard that I felt like it worked against me. Because we remember that watering. I don't know if you remember that moment, Raja, but there was huge lake or some beautiful place that VJ wanted us all to go. And we didn't make it. We went to do a shot that I never used. But yeah, we did stick to the storyboard. It was pretty epic and stressful too. Wouldn't you say, Rajat, at some point, at some level, fun and stressful?
Oh yeah, of course. But see, that's the thing, right? We were on the edge, literally, physically and psychologically all the time, quite a few times there. And I think that's the thing. That's what makes it special.
Yeah, it was. The thing that's great about that, and I know that this is kind of away from the question, but the thing that's great about that is I've taken those life lessons. And you when you kind of ride that close to the edge and you're under that kind of stress and under that thing, then from there, how often are you going to be at that level of stress? So when you are in stressful situations, and I've been in other productions and stuff, I'm much more capable of managing myself because I'm like, dude, I have been at like 18,000 feet for like 2 hours. My brain was suffocating. I had a guy that lost half of my footage. We found it, but we had a chip that we thought we had lost, and I just, so much stress, and I manage this. I can handle what's going on right now. So there's so much good that comes from those experiences as well.
Barry, my second question revolves around your equipment. I do understand that there were extremes in weather and conditions. So how failure proof was your equipment? And did you face any technical challenges with your filming equipment?
I would say the biggest technicality was power. Like, how are we going to get power up there? And at that time, I don't know if Leh has improved at all, but at that time, power would come and go in the city. They kind of shut it down, and it ran kind of intermittently and sometimes not appropriately. So there was always a question of power. And I think the biggest thing that I did to shore up against power, I'd taken 2 car batteries and I'd wired them to chargers, and I would charge my batteries and my equipment through car batteries that I had in a van, and so that I could have power. And then I bought enough storage so that I would never run out of. I had enough storage for all the data that I collected. And at that time, the cameras weren't shooting 4K; they were just shooting HD, but it was still a lot of footage. So those were the 2 biggest things. It just was kind of working that out. And then on the year 2011, when I chased the race, which for me was the most exciting shooting, the 2010 story was better, but 2011 was exciting. When I chased the race, I had the motorcycle, which was insane. And I kind of said that in the thing. I was riding backwards on the motor. I still, to this day, I'm a grown man, and I still can't believe I did that. And Tashi was so awesome, but we had practice and stuff. It was just a little risky, but the shots I got from it were pretty cool. I got some good shots. But then the second place was I had a van and all the, like I said, I had car batteries in there to charge the batteries and enough data to just keep shooting. And so that was the biggest deal. And fortunately, there wasn't any rain situations. No, there was. I had one situation with rain, and I had kind of cover bags for the camera, and there was snow. But nowadays cameras are so durable in the digital age. They're capable to take a lot of stuff. So I was pretty covered in that regard.
And my last question, Barry, is you must have witnessed changes and extremes in the runner personalities and the extremes that they are going through, is there something that you perhaps shot which did not, which you felt should not be coming in the video? Was there something too extreme that does not, is not suitable for viewing? Did you witness anything of that sort?
I think the most extreme thing, and I did film it, and I did put it in, was when Sharon Gaynor finished the race, and she was. I mean, now there's been different discussion because she had some red drink or whatever, but it appeared at that time that she was vomiting blood, but she also had an asthmatic condition. I have never, and I don't think I ever will see it ever again, see a human push themselves so hard. I have never seen anyone push themselves so hard as I saw Sharon Gaynor in 2011. And again, that's the thing with documentaries, is you try to tell the story. Sometimes you can't fully capture what happened. And the reviews that I've gotten from Ultra High, which is the 2011 race, have been mixed. But if they were there in person, I guarantee they wouldn't be mixed, because it was incredible. And Ray Sanchez was a Golden Gloves boxer, and we were up on top of Tingling La, and the dude was like he got knocked out. He couldn't finish sentences. He kept fighting and kept wanting to go, but he was struggling with hypoxia. You could see his brain was just not functioning normally. He was just like, and everyone was swollen. Their hands were swollen. Their bodies were swollen because of the changes in altitude and all that was going on with them. The 2011 race, if there was anything that I would have held back, it would have been that race. And I debated on putting that footage of Sharon vomiting, which because at that time it was just so intense for me. And I started to put the camera away. When I saw her vomiting, I started to pull the camera away. I'm like, oh, this is too intimate and too intense, and I don't want to. And then I was like, no, this is what you're here for. You're the guy that films this stuff. And so I pushed back in with the camera, and it took me a while to be comfortable with that level of because there's a certain amount of exploitation that comes to my industry, and for better or for worse. And so you debate, like, should I be sharing this? Is this something that's appropriate? But those Sharon and Ray, that stuff was intense. The emotions of everyone was pretty, it's not gory or gross, but the emotions, everyone would cry at the finish line. Nearly everyone would cry. Even Ray, who's the toughest guy, you could see emotionally he was just broken. Everyone just broke down at the finish line. It just kicked everyone's butt.
Hi Barry, hi Rajat. Yeah, first of all, wonderful watching the making of the documentary. And I just realized what actually goes beyond the scenes, because I always see people talking, and Rajat also explaining stuff when runners come out of the venue and they start the run. And I just wanted to ask one question to Barry, that on the strategy that you follow, right, to actually film the race. The reason being, I did the first race last year, and I was very keen on understanding or gathering all the knowledge that I need to ensure that I'm out of any kind of danger, right? So Rajat had these checkpoints at every maybe 8 kilometers, and so was there any kind of strategy that you followed, during your filmmaking process? And you thought you should go back home and you just cannot continue anymore?
I kind of leaned on what the runners in Rajat was doing. And I would communicate to who was with me at that time that they need to take care of themselves. There was one point where one of my crew in 2011 was frustrated that I was pushing so hard, because I didn't want to stop. I wanted to capture the entire race, and the race goes through the night, and I was like, how am I going to stop and go to sleep when the runners are still running? And I remember this. It was in the Valley of Leh. One of my crew, we had been shooting for like 18 hours, and he's like, you're pushing us too hard. I'm not going to shoot anymore. And we had a driver of the van. He's like, the driver of the van is an old man with a family. He needs to go home. And I was like, that's fine. I understand it. And I would check in with people. And I said, just leave me here on the side of the road. Like I would literally got left on the side of the road and those guys went home. I got all my gear. I put it in the dirt. I was like, well, a runner's going to come by here soon. I don't remember. Maybe we had a walkie-talkie on us. I don't remember. But Kunal and Pierre picked me up. And then I went with them and got this great scene, if you watch the 2011 race, of them kind of talking about Ray being a machine. And Ray was ahead of Sharon, but he's worried about Ray, and talking about going up the hill. And Ray was scared. Ray was so scared of Sharon. Ray did not want to get beat. I can't express. Ray did not want to get beat by Sharon. He was asking about her every hour on the hour. Where is she? And she was like an attack dog. And so I was alone at this time, and I was just hitching rides from car to car. And you'll notice on the 2011 race, by the end, I'm only covering Ray. And fortunately, Sharon was close to Ray, so because I was in Ray's car. So I was only covering Ray, and actually I was beginning to pace Ray, and everyone's like, Barry, you can't pace Ray. You're the filmmaker, you're not part of the crew, you can't pace Ray. So I just went back to filming, and then I hitched a ride back to Sharon. And at the end of it, I only covered those two because my crew ditched me, and I was basically on my own hitching from runner to runner. But yeah, that was fascinating, and I can't even express the experience of seeing Sharon pass Ray. It was so cool because there was just this ongoing battle between Sharon and Ray all night. She was stalking him like prey, and Ray was doing a Golden Glove. Can you imagine a Golden Gloves boxer in the best fit of his life, just running, like just trying to keep away from this female runner, Sharon Gaynor, who was stalking him like prey, and she just kept on. She just kept on, and Ray just finally, he broke. She passed him. And then he tried to catch her. He did his best. He could do everything he could to catch her. He couldn't catch her. It was such an ultimate race. I mean, I can't even imagine a more exciting race. I wish I'd had a helicopter to film the whole thing from above as well. It was like easily the best race I've ever seen in my life. I had front row seat. But strategy-wise, you know, I checked in with the guys. I knew I had done a lot of high altitude summits. I had done Mount Whitney at 14,000 feet solo. I had done like 5 crests in Sierra Nevadas of California. So I didn't know 18,000 feet, but I knew 14,000 feet, 13,000 feet. So I knew enough about high altitude, HAPE, and the dangers of high altitude that I wasn't going into this blind. It wasn't my first time in high altitude. That being said, there's no way to completely, altitude is such a dangerous beast and not to be toyed with. And there was also the medical crew who was going up and down, and so I would listen to them, and I always checked in with my crew, and I made sure everyone was hydrated, and I had a pulse ox meter on in my car, so I would check my own oxygen levels, and I'd done a lot of breathing training, so I practiced a lot of my breathing from yoga, deep breathing techniques when I was at high altitude to keep my oxygen levels higher. Which is kind of cheating, but that's the best answer. I don't know if Rajat has anything more to offer there. But.
No, that's pretty good. Barry, I mean, Mukul brought it up about, you coming back and, the story from the very beginning. We had 3 runners in the beginning, right? And now here we are. That'll be awesome. Why don't we start working on something like that?
Let's do it. I would love to. I really would. I'm into it.
We have a 555 now, and we have a 55 as well. So it's gone in 2, different directions as well. It's not only a 222 kilometers now.
I've also said for years I want to run a portion of it myself. So maybe I can combo running on one portion and filming on another.
Yeah, for sure. Cool, Barry. Thank you so much. And before we go, it's important to mention that actually the 2 documentaries that Barry was talking about, they are on YouTube, but it'll be fun if we can actually catch up sometime and do a similar thing maybe. What do you suggest, Barry? Do you
all 3 of them, the high, ultra high, and then we screened the making the high here, but if you didn't see it, feel free.
Yeah, Mukul, you were wanting to say something.
Oh, no, I was just saying, Barry, the running and filming portions of it sounds extremely exciting. Maybe, we can film you running and then you can film everyone else running.
Well, filming me running probably wouldn't be exciting. That might be just painful to watch. But I would love to capture another race. That would be a pretty cool experience.
Excellent, Barry. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for coming along. If you have any questions, we'll figure out those answers later. But thanks, Barry. This was brilliant.
This was awesome. Guys, I can't thank you all enough for being part of this, watching what you have watched, asking the questions. It's thrilling for me. I can't express it enough. It's not very often that you get opportunities to interact with people on stuff you've done, and this has been a thrill. And thank you, Rajat, for setting it up. You know how I feel about you. You're one of my heroes, and I love the fact that you give me these opportunities. So thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Thanks, everyone.